Welcome everyone. I'll just kind of do a really quick introduction to myself and the IGDA, and then Tom, I'll pass the mic over to you, and you're welcome to get started whenever you want. You're welcome to wait a few more minutes as well as people continue to trickle in. But I'm Dr. Jakin Vela. You can call me Jakin, of course. I'm the Executive Director of the International Game Developers Association. If you're not familiar with the IGDA, though, I hope you are, because that's how you probably found out about this webinar. We are the largest nonprofit member-driven professional association for game developers. We have the pleasure of partnering with ReadSpeaker on this wonderful webinar that you're about to watch, engage in, and we've got some great speakers in the lineup. But for now, I'm actually going to pass the mic over to Tom. So Tom, feel free to take it away.
Thank you very much. Yeah, and so I'm not a real ground rules kind of guy. So when it comes to how we're gonna kind of walk through the presentation today, feel free to use the chat to ask questions. We may be able to address something in real time, or we'll have some time for Q&A at the end. But the goal here is a roundtable panel discussion with the folks we brought together. So don't hesitate to reach out during the presentation, through the chat, afterwards via email or via the different social medias. This is the start of a conversation is the way I look at this webinar. We're not going to teach you or dive into the details, but we're going to give you a high level overview of how these game developers leverage the ReadSpeaker technology, and we'll kind of take it from there. So I'll start with an introduction to ReadSpeaker. So, for those of you that aren't familiar with the company, so we are a global text-to-speech company with 20 years of experience in the industry. Our core competency has been learning, accessibility, and communication. Recently, with the advancement in DNN and AI technology, things in the synthetic media world are really getting exciting. So in addition to our traditional TTS voices that we've been building for years, now we're building custom synthetic voices for brands like Sonos, where we worked with Juan Carlo Esposito from Breaking Bad and The Mandalorian, and built a synthetic model of his voice that drives the voice control on Sonos smart speakers. We also worked with brand Spotify in building a custom voice model for their car thing device. So the text-to-speech industry is really interesting with the technology. But today we're going to focus on gaming, and how I ended up here, where my background is learning, education, and accessibility, is when Naughty Dog leveraged ReadSpeaker for The Last of Us Part 2. It was about 2020 that they started working with it, and then creating static audio files for their game that they implemented and shipped with the game, so that the actual physical audio files were part of the UI narration, but were shipped with the game. We took notice of the popularity of that game and the accessibility features, and we recognized that it was a solution, but it was really time consuming, that it was really difficult for that developer to implement. And internally, we discussed variable solutions, and it was actually our CTO, Frederick, who was actually visually impaired himself, that suggested and said, we have our speech engine SDK solution that we could leverage for game developers. And that is what we're going to focus on today. So instead of pre-producing TTS audio files, ReadSpeaker took our existing speech engine SDK, and we wrapped a piece of middleware around it and brought it into Unity and Unreal, where now game developers can code or type the text-to-speech commands right into their game. And I'll be first to admit, that's about as much as I know at a technical level. So I'm going to rely on our panelists to kind of help answer your questions and talk about their experience with the plugin, and really give you an understanding of what their experience was, so that you can download the free trial and that you can play with the plugin yourself. So with that, we'll start with quick introductions. Connor, if you want to kick it off.
Thanks, Tom. Hi, everyone. My name's Conor Bradley. I'm the director of Softleaf Studios, small company based in Belfast. We are striving to develop disability-friendly gamer experiences that everyone can enjoy. So we've been working closely throughout our own journey with people who are blind and deaf and those with other physical and mental disabilities to sort of try help us identify the barriers that are in our games and then to help us remove them. We're currently working on an accessible point and click adventure called Stories that Blossom, and we're really proud of where we've got it to, and to see players enjoying the experience and not having to think about their disability and just be able to play like everyone else is really what it's about, and it's we couldn't be more proud of that. So that's me.
Cari.
Yes, absolutely. Hello, I'm Cari. My pronouns are she, her, and I am the senior accessibility designer at Rebellion. But my experience with ReadSpeaker is as an individual, as an independent developer. So I discovered ReadSpeaker through my mentor at Splash Damage, which is another rival UK game studio. And I'm busy working on a prototype in association with Sightless Combat, which I hope to talk a little bit more about.
And rounding it out, Jamin.
Hello, yeah, I'm Jamin Smith. I run a small studio here in the UK called Superstring, but I've been in the games industry for a little while. Been at small studios, been at big studios. I spent 7 years at Square Enix working on some really great IP, and have taken a lot of that learnings into my own development sort of processes outside of work. Superstring's sort of whole MO is around genre fusion and bringing together unlikely systems and mechanics to create something perhaps a little bit different, or yeah, a little bit sort of unexpected. Our most recent release is called Acolyte, which hopefully we'll be talking a little bit more about later, but Acolyte is a natural language detective slash ARG game, which felt like just the perfect fit for text to speech. So hence why I'm here today. And just a quick thank you to Tom and to the IGDA for having me. It's really, really exciting to be here.
Yeah, thank you for joining us. And it should be a good conversation. So Connor, I'll circle back to you because you're the first I met. You know, and I think our first interaction was via Discord at the IGDA Game Accessibility Conference. Was it 2 years ago? 18 months ago? It was
Yeah, I think it was 2 years ago.
yeah. So yeah, and you were the first to dive into the plugin. You know, I said, oh, here's someone that's interested, and you know, we hadn't built anything yet. We hadn't really figured it out, and we kind of gave you a look under the hood. So maybe you can share some of your experiences and what you've done with the plugin and overall.
Yeah, it was really great to have that opportunity, and big thank you, Tom, for reaching out to me at the time. And the plugin has been a huge help to us, and sort of to be a small part of testing that in the beginning was really good learning experience for ourselves as well. So to sort of give understanding of how we use the text to speech, we our mission with Stories of Blossom was to make an accessible game, and we knew going in that text to speech was going to be needed for players who maybe didn't have sight or had lower literacy skills, for example. And having that as a plugin and being able to write in a string of text and then get it read back in real time was huge. Previously, as Tom was mentioning about Last of Us, we were going to go with that approach of creating audio files and then playing those back. But thankfully, we didn't have to go down that route. It was a lot easier being able to set up these systems, but also game development is very an iterative process. So a lot of it is seeing what works and then testing that with our players. And we were no different. We had to change how we were doing things to remove frustration or confusion with players who maybe couldn't see the visuals on screen. And games are very text heavy in some cases and sort of different contexts that they may be missing otherwise. So this was really powerful tool for us to be able to go in and provide that information for those players. And yeah, I can go in more in depth into that. So the way that we set it up is that when the player focuses on a interactable object, they're then read back a label. But we sort of went a wee bit further and made sure that they weren't missing any context in the game. So things like option descriptions, button prompts, text dialogue, and all these kind of things that they would be missing out otherwise. We made sure that those were queued and played back when they were needed. And as I said, from the beginning of our production, we were testing that with players with disabilities and to see what worked and what didn't. And it isn't until you go through that process that you sort of identify areas that you may not have thought of before. And it's a crucial step for us to get our game to where it has been today.
So one thing I enjoyed playing the Story of Blossom, where you have the free demo out there, and I know Maurice put the link in the chat so people can check it out. Is you have the mix of TTS for the UI narration and then the voice actors for the typical gameplay, and it just seems to really work well together. I know I've asked you a couple of times about which TTS voice should we use, where we gave you a few options, and that's one thing that you and I have chatted about giving the player control where they can change the voice that they listen to on the accessibility prompts.
Yeah, definitely. That was a big part to our game, is giving the player as many options as possible, because listening back to some play sessions of how fast players like their text-to-speech, to me that was like, how do you understand that? But some people like it really fast, so then they're getting all that information. It's just what they're used to. So giving them the options to change the speed, the pitch, as you say, the different voices, it's been really great having those 3 different voices in our game. And the most recent one, Molly voice, has been, I think it suits our game really well, just being a bit more child friendly kind of experience. And
Yes.
we found that players were blown away by that. Sort of, it's like, wow, I can do this in the game. And how easy it was to set up from a developer's point of view as well.
Yeah, it's
Very
interesting, and
useful.
that's going to bring me over to Cari, and it's actually a question, Cari, I asked in your when I saw you present a couple of weeks ago. So the voice Molly is a female child voice that suits the game well, like Conor said. But what we got for my answer that Sightless gave was, no, I like a standard TCX voice for that exact reason, because I want to speed it up. I may want to slow it down. For me, it's not a character voice. It is a supporting voice. So I just found that an interesting parallel, what Conor shared. But then I think about Conor's journey, being the first to play with this and walking through the plugin, and it just lines up with what you're building. So maybe you can share, what you're working on and your involvement with Sightless Combat and your kind of adventure.
Yeah, absolutely. So first thing that I will say is that, like, yeah, Sightless absolutely wants to speed things up and change the pitch and be able to hear it back very fast. I have watched his streams before and I've had to say, hey, can you slow it down so I can hear what's going on, please? Bless him. But one of the big things with accessibility is that it's adaptability is so important because it's based on people's preferences and what works best for them. So like what works best for sightless might not necessarily work for everybody else. And I think it's great to have all those different voices available because you can choose things that fit the theme of the game more. But anyway, on to your actual question to me, which was what I'm actually working on. So I'm doing a prototype with Sightless Combat. The title is Project Black Cat. That's what we've gone for, cat with a K to match up with combat in his name. And it is a prototype of a fully blind accessible third-person stealth action game. So it's in association with him because we started chatting a while ago and he said, I want to be able to make prototypes, but I can't because the tech isn't accessible to me. And I said, well, I want to deepen my knowledge of designing for gamers without sight. So why don't we work together to create this project? We can work on something that can be the entire purpose of it is knowledge sharing. So we want to work on it and iterate. We want to be able to see where we can collaborate with other charities like RNIB and try and release as much information as we can around that prototype to help other people understand things that they can do to make their games accessible for gamers without sight. Because the amount of developers, when I first start talking about accessibility, that go, I didn't even think it was possible for someone who's blind to play a video game. I want to show it's possible and here's ways that you can do it whilst also learning myself. So that's a lot of what I am doing. Yeah, did you have any other questions?
No, I think that I'll come back to you, but it's it's great what you're building, and I know when that sample project is out there, it's one of the things we get asked for a lot, saying is there a project that you can show us where your utility is being used? What guidance can you give us? We have what I feel is strong documentation, but it's that real world use case that is going to be great to be able to share with the community, and also give them the roadmap of here are the things to build into your game to make it accessible. So pivoting from accessibility to more character voice or interactions, Jamin, I'm going to come to you because I think the way we met is probably the not that exciting. You came to us through Google, but I love the background, so maybe you can share how you ended up needing read speaker or needing text to speech and how you found us and what you've done with it.
Yeah. So, I mean, firstly, congrats to your marketing team, whoever's in charge of your SEO. That's how I got in touch with you. You rank pretty highly when you search for text to speech on Google. So yeah, kudos to your marketing team. Yeah, so I guess my route into this whole conversation is almost the opposite of Cari and Conor, in that I wasn't coming at this from an accessibility point of view initially, and there's definitely been benefits to Acolyte off the back of integrating the Read Speaker plugin. But my kind of angle to this was more around, I guess, kind of the budgetary constraints around providing VO in a game with a lot of dialogue as a small indie developer. So just to, I guess, set the scene a little bit, Acolyte is a very narrative driven, I guess, detective ARG game. The whole sort of setup is that you as the player are invited into this world as an employee of a fictional company called Nanomax. Nanomax are a tech conglomerate who are developing an AI tech themselves. So they're actually developing this personal assistant for the, I guess, more of a corporate assistant, I should say, who's designed to help facilitate business and sort of that kind of executive PA type thing. So you're actually, as the player, brought in as a QA tester for this kind of unfinished bit of tech, which is called the Acolyte program. So you get your own digital assistant, and your job is to talk with her, to work out sort of any issues she might have in terms of her interactions. And if you spot any of those kind of bugs or quirks, your job is actually to kind of be a QA tester and provide bug reports to the fictional company within the game. So it's very kind of immersion breaking. And it's great for me as a developer because if there are real bugs, I can hide them as being intentional bugs, which is nice. But I actually released Acolyte in late June of this year. And I think it was a great release, and I got a lot of good kind of critical feedback, but it didn't match that expectation that I had for the game when I first sat down and kind of imagined what it was going to be. And largely that's because of the lack of a voice. And I mean that genuinely. And that was why when I got to the point that I could release a 1.1 to the game, I always knew that I wanted to try and get voice in there in some form. And it wasn't available to me with my kind of scope and my budget with the release. But for 1.1, I thought, how can I think outside the box here? And started to kind of do some research into the whole TTS angle. And yeah, after a quick Google search and a really informative chat with Tom and the team, I got my hands on the plugin. And I don't claim to be a fantastic programmer. My design expertise is more in narrative and I guess more holistic design. But even as a kind of a non-strong coder, I was able to get the plugin implemented in my project in about 20 minutes. And my whole project, which again has a lot of dialogue and it's all generated at runtime, it's all natural language. So as a player, you can actually type your responses and your interactions with Anna, your acolyte, in real time. So I never know what she's going to respond. It's not like it's not authored in that way. So it would be impossible for me to find an actor to bring that game to life. Like it's just an impossibility of the project. So the Read Speaker plugin allowed me to turn a game with hundreds of thousands of lines of dialogue that I can't predict into a fully voiced game in about half an hour, which again, to me as a non-technical coder to some extent was absolutely mind-blowing. And that's the version of the game that is out today on Steam. So the 1.1 update was actually themed around the voice specifically. So it's called the Voice Within update. And it's kind of, it was really nice because obviously as an AI, the voice matched really well. There is that slightly synthetic sort of tone. And I tried to retain that actually. To some extent, the more natural the voice, the less it kind of worked with Anna as a digital assistant. So, the number of voices that were available within that plugin, I could really choose which felt right for that character. And yeah, so the version that's out there today, fully voiced, you can turn it on, you can turn it off. I know some people might prefer just to have the written experience, but for me, matching my original vision of the game, it's just the game I wanted to make now, and that's genuinely thanks to the plugin. And I sound like I'm kind of selling this a bit kind of hardball, but it's true. Like the game is a much better game for it, and the plugin's to thank for that.
Yeah, well, I think that's the experience that I had, talking with you, understanding the game and seeing that's the feature that was missing, and it was so dialogue heavy, and having that dynamic text, the text to speech just fit in. It's interesting, the conversation about voice, my focus is always quality. Let's put our best foot forward, and your feedback of no, given the focus of the game, this is the voice that we want to go with. So I think about your dynamic content, and I'll let you answer first, and then Cari or Conor, feel free to chime in. But as the non-game developer, I think about where can this be used, and is it really applicable? I think about your dynamic content, and I think about NPC character interactions. Is that what's your thought on that? And you're working with like NPC characters. Have you played with them at all?
Yeah, I think it's an interesting question, and I guess as a studio whose sort of first thought and area of focus is around narrative and character and bringing immersive worlds to life, I think the industry is generally kind of moving to a point where having player tailored dialogues and interactions that are bespoke to that player and any customizations they might have within that world is so key. And we're getting less authored on that front, and less authorship is fantastic, but it comes with a bunch of constraints as well. And again, as an indie and as somebody with a very finite wallet available to me, those constraints are hard to work with. I'll never be able to deliver on that kind of fully player tailored experience because I can't come up with that much VO. So I think we're going to see more and more text to speech in narrative games moving forward, whether they're games like Acolyte, where the kind of the context is AI and, you know, androids and cyborgs not coming, but that's one use case. But I think as your tech gets more and more lifelike, and it will get to a point where it's impossible to distinguish, and it's nearly there already, right? But I think we're going to see far more of our NPCs delivering natural, you know, dialogue that is bespoke to the player. And I don't think the end user is actually going to be able to tell whether their dialogue has been generated via TTS or an actor. And that's the real sort of, I guess, end ambition here, right? Once we can get to that point, I think we've all achieved something really special.
Absolutely. I would probably hop in and say very much the same with that, especially from an indie perspective where you have a limited budget and you have limited scope. And also in projects where, let's be honest, it's games, things are constantly changing. And especially when it comes to narrative and dialogue, that can be something that changes at the last minute, or you find out that there are bugs that you haven't accounted for. So having a dynamic text-to-speech solution is kind of like a one-time investment, which will cover every instance, every iteration. You don't need to worry about getting somebody back into the recording booth because you've forgotten to get them to do a war cry or something. So yeah, I can see it being incredibly useful, particularly from the indie perspective. And with the free version of the plugin coming out as well, being able to play with that as much as they need to, and then they can just put the funds towards their actual license release. I think it will be really, really cool.
I think another point to add to that is if you were going down the route of using voice actors, even just having the plugin as a temporary voice there to sort of help work out what those narratives are, so you won't have to worry about going back into the booth and editing. I know we used that when we were doing audio description for our game, before I got Claire to record it. We used the text-to-speech to try out to see what players thought about, is that enough information, too much information, that kind of testing that's allowed. I think if you were having to go back and forth, it's too costly, and you're wasting precious development time that could be spent on other things. So that's what I would add to that for sure.
Yeah,
Yeah,
I think go ahead, Jamin.
I was just going to kind of echo what Conor was saying in that kind of rapid prototype phase, which I'm actually in right now for the next Superstring project. Having the opportunity just to have the plugin there from the start, and my next game basically has commentary, like dynamic commentary, and already I'm seeing that in effect in the new game that's just, you know, grey box and placeholder, everything, and yet that feature is there fully realized, which is, yeah, really incredible. So I'd echo that kind of rapid prototyping and proving out your pipelines with that side of the game is, yeah, it's made so much more easy.
Yeah, and what Cari mentioned about the free plugin and kind of what we've already built upon the plugin based on feedback. Our lead developer Pontus, he has some background in the game development industry. He kind of came to us with the idea of saying, game developers want to try the tech. They want to experience it. They want to try it before they buy it. And he said, we have to have this free version. So what ReadSpeaker is going to be rolling out in this month is what we call a audio watermarked version. So you'll be able to leverage the plugin in Unity and Unreal, fully featured, and do your prototyping, and you'll just have an audio watermark behind the TTS technology, so that when the time's ready to publish your game, you would purchase a license and remove that audio watermark. But that way you can leverage the prototyping and the runtime TTS right inside your project. Cari, that leads me to you. And when we first talked, I remember you had looked into the game engine text-to-speech solutions, and it was that shortcomings that brought you to ReadSpeaker. You want to give us a little background on that?
Yeah, absolutely. So obviously I needed text-to-speech because I was making a blind accessible prototype, and I was going to go with Unreal because it's what I'm familiar with, and I knew from their documentation that they had some solutions as part of the thing. So I started with Unreal Engine 4. I tried to kind of get it to work and it didn't, and it was very frustrating. And I started a Twitter thread and I downloaded Unreal 5 and tried that solution, which also wasn't working. And I ended up with about 3 people from Epic replying to me and being like, oh, that should be working and it's not. Oh, well. Like we'll try and get it fixed when we can. And at this point, you know, I'd spent 4 hours trying to get a single button to just say the word button, and I was like this close to just recording it myself. And then Reed Speaker had been mentioned to me a couple times, and I was like, I don't know in terms of like the licenses or the trial that's available, if it's going to be something that's going to be able to suit what I want to do. But I managed to get in touch with Tom, had an amazing conversation about the project and what we wanted to do with it and the way that we can help each other, and it was fantastic. And then I downloaded the plugin, put it in, and within about 5 minutes it just worked. It was Skyrim. It just worked, and it was beautiful. Going from the like 4 to 5 hours of pain with the kind of native engine stuff to then just Reed Speaker working immediately was fantastic. I think like it does highlight some things with like, yes, it should be easier to make games accessible in engine, but we have this amazing solution here which works across multiple platforms, and there's amazing range of voices, amazing support, wonderful people behind it. So
yeah, I mean the development team that I work with, I mean, I can't give them enough credit for what they've done. And, you know, they appreciate the feedback and they look at it as, you know, if something doesn't work or if somebody has another way to incorporate it, you know, they're happy to get that feedback. So, you know, we believe in that two-way communication. So, you know, we won't just release a tool and leave it out there. We're going to constantly work on it and improve it. So I'm going to jump into one of the questions because it kind of ties into this conversation. But so the key difference with the Reed Speaker plugin is we're talking about, you know, dynamic runtime text-to-speech on the device. So what we've done is we've taken our speech engine SDK application and we've ported it to the PlayStation consoles, soon to be released Xbox consoles. It in its original form, it already supported Windows, Linux, and Android. So when you're working in Unity and Unreal, you know, as the business development person, I say you're coding the text to speech. So Conor, Cari, correct any terminology that I get incorrect, but you're coding or writing the text to speech. And when you compile the game, the speech engine the application is part of your game files so that the TTS is generated locally on the device.
Yep, that's 100%. The way that we're approaching it is we have a list of lines that are triggered, and that way then we can localize it and such, so it's not hard coded, the strings, and it's made simple to us. So you just go text to speech dot say, and then you put in the name or the text that you want to say, and it says it. It can be as simple as that, but it's really powerful that you can go ahead and queue different lines. So if there's something that's priority or if something's skipped by the player, it holds on to those important information and then puts it in place. So it is powerful. It's really a tool there that you can use and customize in that respect to work how you want it to work. And that's been really good for us.
And Conor,
definitely
response times, have you done anything? And I don't know, I know we've done some testings, but any issues with response times, anything you can speak to that?
response times as in
from the time to generate the text to speech and in lag or
yes.
you know, because you're doing UI narration, you know, and things are happening. This might be for Cari as well, where, you know, the you know, combat game is the importance of speed in what's happening around the player.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I would say I've had absolutely no problems with it, with any lag or anything like that. It's always been incredibly responsive. And so, yeah, the two kind of use cases that I've got at the moment are menu and HUD narration and also some audio descriptors, the same kind of way that you were talking about before in your project. So, yeah, having those around the world, and we have it triggered on the UI side. So it's like when hovered, it says a thing. Also, we have it to do with like where there are objects in the world and then the player is overlapping them. And there's been no problems either way. It's very, very responsive and very straightforward.
Yeah, it's an interesting conversation I have with the Reed Speaker engineering team. So you first, our speech engine SDK, it was built for speed and performance because, 5 years ago, 10 years ago, we were making parking meters talk. We were making, elevator interfaces, and CPU power was at a minimal. Now, as we get more powerful processors, we can increase the quality, and it's that trade-off of where do the two cross? What is fast enough where you get the highest quality, and it's a battle with internally with our engineering team. I said, no, I want more quality. They're like, no, it's not fast enough. So from response times, we've never had any feedback that it's too slow. And if someone came to me and said, it needs to be faster, we have a faster option. We just have to roll back on the quality of voice, and that's where you start to trade off, that between the two. So, Jamin, in your game, I know a lot of your text is generated in real time. And speaking of your game, I have to get back in because my progress bar is still about 56%, and that kills me. It's like, all right, what am I missing? So, but anything you'd add around response times or related to that conversation?
No, not a huge amount to add other than it's never been an issue in Acolyte whatsoever. The conversation moves quickly in Acolyte. It effectively simulates a text exchange as if you were, texting a friend or something. So any delay in that, that VO to be delivered would really hamper the experience. But there's been no issues on that front. You can generate entire paragraphs of text, and there's no perceivable lag associated with that whatsoever. So, maybe in my next project I'll manage to push it to the point that I can break that or create some lag. But right now for Acolyte, it was never an issue, thankfully.
Great. Yeah, it's like I said, we love to hear the feedback, but both positive and negative. So Conor, for your game, I know I saw recently that you're also going to bring it to the Xbox. That I don't believe you've done any testing yet. Is that right?
For Xbox?
Yeah, like I know have related to the text to speech. Have you? Maybe you have, and I just don't know.
Yeah, we're currently in certification process, so there is some stuff happening there. But yeah, like we've been working with the accessibility team in Xbox, and they are incredible. And
So what I was getting at,
sort
or
of,
I was going to say, my thought process is when our goal in the plugin is when you compile the game for the Xbox, is the speech engine SDK for the Xbox is sent with the game files. So from your point of view, you don't have to build another version of the game for the Xbox.
no, like it works the same way as it is on the PC. It's just the calls that are being read just work as you would expect it. And I think I was showing my brother the other day of sort of the voices, and he couldn't believe that it was text to speech just because of how like real sounding the voices were. And the fact that that's happened in real time, and I haven't run into any issues at all in that respect, um, in both PC and Xbox, which is great.
Yeah, so that we just yesterday, not lining up with this webinar by, any, reason, but we just happened to launch or announce our PlayStation 4 and 5 support. So now our speech engine SDK has been successfully ported and released for the PlayStation consoles. We've done the porting for the Xbox consoles. The work right now is being done to bring to finalize the speech engine SDK for the Xbox and the middleware that is the game engine plugin, and bring those two together so that they work seamlessly. And we're hopeful to release full support for the Xbox platforms by the end of the year. So we're on pace to to have a fully functioning solution across all major consoles. If someone came to us and said, we want to build a game for the Switch, or we want to build a game for iOS and we need it, our engineering team is happy to look at it. Our speech engine SDK works on both those platforms. We just haven't had a request yet to bring that into the game engine plugin. So that's the type of things that, as a end-to-end company, ReadSpeaker can pivot and do different things based on the needs of the game developer and what they want to build. One of the questions we had was around Vizimes or Vizimes. Depending on who I talk to, the pronunciation changes, but it's lip syncing information. And that's something that we've started working on for version 2 of the plugin, where we'll also provide that data. And if you're not familiar with them, that's what gives MetaHuman or your other character building software the lip sync information. So that's something we provide in our API solutions, our web-based API solutions, and we've brought it to the plugin so that we'll be able to generate lip syncs in real time as well. So it's available. We haven't produced any demos or any showcases yet, just because it is so new, but it's something that we were asked for, and people said that the NPC characters need to have lip syncing. So the development team took it on. So, Conor, what's next? I mean, what's the timeline for Stories of Blossom? When can people kind of look to see that, the playable version's out there now, but what's your timeline moving forward?
Yeah, so we hope to release Stories of Blossom in spring of next year. So we're busy working away, getting it all together. And as you say, there is a demo on Steam currently for anyone who wants to check out the text-to-speech in action. And if you have any feedback, do let us know. But yeah, sort of we've got to a stage in production where we were spending a lot of our sort of production sort of seeing what we could do to make it more accessible. And we sort of got to the point now where, okay, well, we need to stop at some point as well to actually release the game. So we're working away at getting it ready. But that'll be available on PC and Xbox Series X and S. But yeah, it's going good for again, just seeing that the amount of players that can enjoy the experience and come to us and say, just thank you for thinking about other people and that they can actually go ahead and enjoy this experience. And we've had comments of people saying that my day was improved after playing your game, and those kind of comments that are really keep us going in the process. And it shows that the work that we have put into it, there is a large audience there that is benefiting from it, and hopefully more games will sort of bring on accessibility into their own products and see that it can help everyone. It doesn't necessarily just have to be people with disabilities. There's different temporary and situations that benefit from these kinds of features. And yeah, I think it's exciting to see accessibility grow more and more people. So I think I can highly recommend other developers interested in it sort of downloading the demo of Reed Speaker's plugin and giving it a go for yourselves and sort of get on that journey, because that's sort of the important thing, is sort of taking that first step.
Yeah. So, Cari, anything you want to share about your project or timeline? I know it's a passion project, and it, so
Absolutely. Yes, I love describing it as a passion project. I make games for a living, and then I make games in my spare time to relax. Yes. But yes, it is. Yeah, in terms of what we have at the moment, we have like a basic prototype. I've actually just had Sightless okay that I can send out the little demo video that he's done. So I'll add that in the chat in a second. You can see like where we're at. But basically, we're using the text to speech for the menu and HUD narration. And as we've seen in kind of things like God of War, Ragnarok, without text-to-speech and key menus like the skills and inventory, it severely limits what a gamer without sight can do without sighted assistance. So this prototype has gone in with text-to-speech from the start, and it's made it part of the pipeline. It's from the beginning. It's working with Sightless to make sure that it's incorporated from the get-go so that we can get as much out as possible. So in terms of our timeline, we've got that initial version of the demo. We've got a couple more sort of mechanics that we're going to be looking to add to it, and ways that we're going to be working. It looks like I might be able to get some audio assistance in terms of through some students from Abertay as well, which is my old stomping grounds, old university stomping grounds, which is fantastic because it's yet more knowledge sharing and being part of the next generation of game developers. So looking for sort of early next year to be able to share more about the project. I would really love to get, our plan is to get some kind of like blog up, because I've been writing all of these developer diary kind of things to say, this is all the stuff that's gone on and this is what we've been working on. Because as I said, like knowledge sharing is at the heart of this. I want it to be as much information as possible, and for people who have no idea how to approach this to come in and see it and not have to have that barrier of trying to find someone to talk to like have a lot of research which is there and helpful. So yeah, that's the kind of thing. I'd love to be able to test the prototype with RNIB's group of visually impaired gamers as well. I've been working with them on a couple of other conferences and things, and they're lovely. So it would be great to get some rounds of testing and feedback from there, and we can really add to the value of the sort of final product, final project, not product. Also, I keep saying we. I'm like, I'm company wired to say we, but it's
that's it. Well,
it's me trying to code.
That's it. I get in the same trouble when I say we in my talking about a project I'm going to do on my house, and my father-in-law looks at me like, we as in the mouse in your pocket, or we as in I'm coming over to help you. I'm like, so I can understand your share there. So so Jamin, I know you teased an upcoming project, but I'll let you say, Acolyte's available now, and I know you added the new release. Anything you want to round out about your game and what you're working on?
Yeah, so as you said, Acolyte is now sort of finished as a project. There might be some sort of minor fixes and quality of life stuff down the line, but I've kind of moved on to the next project, which I can tease a little bit, but I'm currently prototyping that and sort of going through the whole funding process. So I need to keep it under wraps to some extent. But yeah, I mean, the plan with that is to have the TTS integrated from day dot and actually design with that in mind, rather than implementing it after the fact. And I guess implementing it after the fact has been no bad thing for me or for Acolyte. The fact that the game could support a plugin after release is quite something. I thought I'd have to refactor my code base, rewrite a whole bunch of stuff to make it work, and that wasn't the case at all. So I have no issues with adding something for a 1.1 or late in the day, but equally I'm excited to see how I can push the plugin and what I might be able to get out of it when designing for it explicitly. I think off the back of today and hearing what Cari and Conor have had to say as well, it reminds me of a project I was working on a few years back called 3 Monkeys, which was an audio RPG. And funny enough, we were kind of working with the RNIB at the time as well, kind of having them sort of help out a little bit. It never got off the ground. We had a Kickstarter that sadly didn't get to our funding goal. And it just kind of making me think now, like today, with that plugin in mind, maybe that project can be revived. We had a lot of love from it at the time and a lot of community interest, a lot of press interest, but sadly didn't have the funds to get it off the ground, because a game like that requires a lot of really strong voice talent. And today, you know, maybe the playing field's different. Maybe that project can see the light of day via other means, which is really exciting, because yeah, I've not thought about it in years, but actually hearing everything that's been said today, maybe that project can see the light of day after all.
Great. Yeah. So just to see if I can catch up on some of the questions that I've taken note of, and if I miss any, just add them to the chat again. But you know, it's funny to see some of the names that pop up, and Rob Mead and I talked, you know, 18 months ago or even longer, before the plugin was a thing. So what Rob played with was an experience that created static audio files, that we had a web-based solution that, you know, would allow you to, you know, generate your audio files, and we were playing around with adding reverb and echo and different things that you could manipulate the voices. So Rob, to answer your question, yes, we've added additional voices, and we're coming out with something else, because we know not everything needs to be dynamic and speech engine SDK. But overall, the voice offerings continue to expand. And with the DNN and AI technology, you know, being applied to TTS, we're making more and more voices each year. So, you know, we're you know, on plan to add 2 to 4 languages every year, as well as additional voices. So yeah, that voice library will expand. Fasi, you had a question about NPC characters and punch-in lines. I think Jamin answered that one, where, you know, he talked about the dynamically created content and sending that to the speech engine. You know, that's absolutely something we support, and a key piece of how we built the plugin. So Antonio, you asked about the Switch. If there's a game developer out there, we've already ported the speech engine to the Switch. It's available in the Nintendo developer portal. It's not compatible with the game engine plugin. Distinction there. It works locally on the Switch, and you have to generate the local APIs. So it's a bit more of a lift to use it in Nintendo, but it can be pulled into the Switch if someone is in Unity or Unreal building a Switch game. So Axel dives into the key question, pricing. So we're still at, you know, what I'll say draft pricing, but I think the key pieces, we're focused on making this affordable for indie developers. You know, we're trying to make this solution, you know, as affordable as possible. So reach out and we'll talk about your project. We're following the model from, you know, what we've seen in similar perpetual software license products. So we look at what Fmod has done and what Wise has done, where, you know, we're going to sell you a product that's a one-time fee that's going to work for the life of the game. But yeah, pricing information we can share, you know, once we know more about your specific project. And then I think that, yeah, I think that's the outstanding questions. So we made it right on time. So Conor, Cari, Jamin, I mean, you know, the 3 of you have introduced me to the game developer field, and if everyone's as nice as you, it's going to be a great industry for me to work in. So thank you for both checking out our tool, for using it, and, you know, for speaking on our behalf today. I can't say enough about the 3 of you. So thank you very much.
Thank you so much for having us. I think, like, if there's one thing I want to round this all out with, is that, like, it's so amazing to have access to ReadSpeaker and have it as something there for accessibility, because games should be and are for everyone. And this just helps us to make games that more people can enjoy. And, like, having been at PAX the last weekend as well, like, one of the most amazing things is the fact that we make games. Those bring people happiness and experiences, and it is so wholesome. And to be able to open that up to more people is fantastic. So yes, thank you so much.
That awkward pause of who's going to talk first, Jamin or Conor? I see you're both unmuted, so I was breathing.
I was giving that polite breathing room. Yeah, I mean, echoing exactly what Cari said. It's amazing to be able to work with the tool, and also just see how far it now sort of, it evolves over the coming months and years. And already in the time that we've been talking, I've seen great advancements in the tech and how it's being applied. And just on a personal level today, it's been great to see other projects other than my own, and how those are shaping up with very different, intentions. And yeah, so thank you to ReadSpeaker, thank you to the IGDA, and thank you to Cari and Conor for sharing with what they're working on as well.
And again, I would the same thing here. Thanks so much for also believing in us to make use of the plugin and being there to support us through it. I know yourself, Tom, and Pontus have been hugely helpful to us, sort of fixing any concerns that we had, and to be transparent about that as well has really helped us on our journey as well. So, and I can't wait to check out everyone's projects as well. They all sound really interesting. So that's what I'm going to be doing straight after this.
Great. Well, I think that concludes our conversation. So thanks, everyone.